And then maybe now just to summarize and wrap up a little bit. So I think that we talked earlier about this IoT enabling effect and the potentially huge economic impacts this will have in the coming years. And the key thing to this is that realizing this impact will require solutions that can close value loops to efficiently modify system behavior, and really marking this transition from a kind of a reactive systems that we have today and reactive behavior change, as in you only change your behavior when there's a problem that's something is broken, for example, to being more proactive and more prescriptive, so that you can anticipate problems before they they become a real problem, and then also know exactly what you have to change and prescribe to be able to fix those problems. The automation of the design, or excuse me, the automation of the data, information, knowledge, wisdom process is really a key to understanding how to efficiently modify behavior, enabling these value loops. The sophistication and scope of IoT systems allow many options for implementing DIKW processing trade-offs, and these may depend on the application and the use case. And then the partitioning, between edge battery-powered or energy harvest-powered edge devices, all the way to powered gateways and cloud systems. There's lots of different options available there. And today, conventional wisdom suggests that processing of IoT systems in the cloud should be done at the cloud, but we believe that moving processing to the edge enables smarter sensors and information extraction closer to the source itself. And then I think finally that I want to say just thank you for watching, and for additional information, please check out the following links.
And our first question, can you give us some examples of applications that are benefiting today from IoT technologies?
Yeah, certainly. So, probably one of the, let me start with I'm going to start over. So, yeah, certainly. So probably one of the biggest impacts where we're seeing impact of IoT technologies today are in manufacturing. So over the past several years, there's been some major initiatives. I think probably the most notable is the Industry 4.0 initiative that was initially kind of led out of Germany, but now has been kind of adopted and has been used in many different areas or around the world. Really, that is which is targeted at using automation and increasing use of automation and sensing to improve the efficiencies towards in mass production systems. So today, or in the past, the whole idea of kind of factory systems was really targeted about improving, the efficiency at which you mass produce large quantities of the same thing, right? And do it by constantly improving yield. And there's practically a century of kind of improvements and changes and, behind that. But increasingly, the ability to start using similar, mass production or factory systems to build customized or bespoke products, so has a lot of benefits. So for example, it allows you to cut down on the number of production lines you run, since you don't have to, run a single production line for every different sort of version or variant of a product. You can simply use the same production line and then actually customize the product as it moves through this. And this is enabled by using sensors that may start on the very first component of the product line. Maybe it's a chassis or something, and then the sensors themselves can pick up various tags that are attached to the product as it moves through the product line, and allow you to customize whether it's color, whether it's potential features or accessories that get put on the product as it gets built. And the ability to kind of do this very efficiently allows an awful lot of flexibility and efficiencies in large production facilities. Other examples in the world today, that the idea of in healthcare, this idea of being able to build these kind of clinical grade instruments that are now wearable or portable or even disposable, is kind of changing the ways in which doctors and and medical professionals can gather information about patients, and this can be really, really key when dealing with sort of chronic type issues, or even potential patients that are at risk of an acute issue, because today or in the past, doctors would only really gain insights into how a patient was feeling during an office visit or a hospital visit. Now they have the ability, through some of these instruments to be able to track and monitor how a patient is doing in their normal day-to-day activities, which can give very, very, much more powerful insights. Asset tracking and fleet tracking are other areas that have been around for a while. Tracking, packages and being able to, with various tags and so on, to optimize, warehousing and the whole distribution chain. Again, are technologies that have, been around for a while, and industry leaders like UPS and FedEx and so on have been doing this. But the idea of now adding smart tags and active tags makes that whole process an awful lot more efficient. So, IoT, as it is at the end of the day, it's not a single monolithic type of application. It's a range of different technologies that get, are starting to, permeate our day-to-day lives, and as more and more connected devices kind of beyond our mobile phones become parts of our lives today.
Okay, thank you very much. And our second question, how does more processing power on the edge devices reduce overall system power? You would think that more processing would result in more power being consumed by the node.
So, this is a fairly complicated question, but the idea, what we've noticed in certainly trends in the last, few years, maybe longer, is that the advent of these deep submicron processing technologies from wafer fabs, allow us to build a lot more devices and put a lot more transistors on an integrated circuit these days. And so the actual cost from a power perspective of running a processor, it has been getting progressively lower, right? So, what you could run now today, kind of in the milliwatt or microwatt level, a few years back could have been at the, tens or hundreds of milliwatt level. We've seen, that we've been able to, we and many vendors in the industry have been able to leverage these newer deep submicron technologies to really cut down the amount of power that gets dissipated on processing, right? But on the other hand, if you look at communication requirements, right, as soon as you turn on the transmitter, right, there's always going to be a certain amount of power needed to be able to broadcast over a certain distance, whether it's wired or wireless, right? So to some extent, for a given amount of data being transmitted, right, at a certain rate, the power, of the actual transmitter itself is going to be fairly consistent. Now, there are definitely technologies that help optimize that, whether it's some of the digital pre-distortion techniques that, certainly that, we've done some work in, also just optimizing the power on receivers. But ultimately, at the end of the day, there's still a fair amount of power needed to actually move data, from one location to the other. Right. And so basically, quite a few years back, we did kind of pass a threshold where, almost like the transmission power in systems was starting to significantly dwarf the actual processing power needed in systems. And so, there's a lot of areas underway today, or a lot of areas today where people and companies, customers, try to do much more processing on the edge devices themselves as a means to cutting down the amount of data you have to transfer, and therefore, the amount of transmission power that's needed in a system.
Okay, thank you. And our next question, can you talk about managing remote devices after they are deployed? How important is this?
So I didn't really touch on this during the presentation too much, but I think once the ability to upgrade devices, monitor status devices is really key when you've got large deployments of remote devices. So today, most of us as consumers or users of technology, through whether it's computers or smart devices such as tablets or smartphones, often, we manually intervene to either restart a device or to upgrade, right? Sometimes the upgrades can be automated. Oftentimes we're asked when we want to automate that. So all of our products and devices that we use today have the benefit of ourselves and a user interface to make decisions around managing those devices, okay? When you have a device that's on a light pole somewhere, or potentially, buried in the ground on the farm, you don't have those benefits. And so the importance of doing remote management is key, and not only for just maintaining the value of the actual device itself, because it's clearly not very valuable if it goes offline and you can't connect to it, or it becomes much more expensive to deal with if you have to send somebody out to go find out why it went offline. It maybe starts to defeat certainly the financial benefits of having sensor networks to begin with. And so, having a robust system that allows you, with a variety of different recovery modes, that if a device does hit an error stage, an error situation, it can recover back to a mode that at least allows a remote service to get access to it, right? The other question then that comes into all of this is, as I mentioned earlier, is the question of security, right? How do you ensure that that any upgrades or changes or status information that's coming from the device is genuine, right, and that the devices can't get hacked? So it's really important that the security of these devices be at a very high level, so that you guarantee that there's a level of trust when a device does connect to a cloud service, that you can validate that it's actually indeed a real device and it hasn't been tampered with in any fashion. And then, the other more general thing, if you think about what we do on our devices today, I mean, we typically upgrade for new features. We typically upgrade for security patches or just bug fixes. All of these are going to be really, really important. I mean, the bug fixes and security updates will really be table stakes. But as we sort of think about, these systems, and as they roll out, and as your customers certainly would be paying a subscription to have these systems in the field and monitored, it's really important that the monitoring be accurate and reliable, and then also that you have the ability to add new features potentially through over-the-air updates as the device goes through its life cycle in the field.
All right, well, terrific. That is going to conclude today's presentation. On behalf of Electronic Design, I'd like to thank Colm. I'd like to thank you for joining us on the webcast today.